The night of the fire, the heavens withheld their stars. Smoke curled over Salem like a warning whispered too late. Townsfolk screamed and ran, carrying buckets forming chains, eyes fixed on the red glow pulsing behind the northern hills, just as William had planned. But Mercy didn't run with them. She was already on the southern trail. The path was narrow, overgrown and ancient. It twisted like a serpent through the woods, a hunting trail from the time before colonists, before the Puritans paved over the sacred silence with sermons and gallows. Mercy's horse was small but sure-footed, galloping through the trees like it knew what was at stake. Each thundering hoofbeat was a prayer. Let me reach Boston. Let me reach him. Let him believe me. She carried the evidence beneath her cloak, 29 copied pages of the Blackwell ledger. A list of missing persons, notes on secret burials, sketches of symbols, names, dates, blood. But less than an hour into her flight, she heard it. A whistle behind her, low, sharp, repeating. Then hooves, multiple, fast. They had found her. Somewhere, William's fire hadn't been enough, or someone had talked. She didn't know who. She didn't care. All that mattered now was speed. Mercy urged the horse forward. The forest blurred. Branches clawed at her cheeks. Her cloak tore. Her papers shifted beneath her bodice like restless ghosts. She reached the old footbridge over Blackwood Creek, a rotted plank crossing barely wide enough for a wagon. Behind her the riders closed in. She risked a glance back, and her stomach dropped. Sheriff Josiah rode in front, his walking stick clutched like a sword. 2 deputies flanked him, torches in hand. But worse was the face she saw behind them. William, expression blank, eyes dull. Her own blood had led them to her. They shouted her name. She didn't stop. Instead, she kicked her horse forward, across the bridge and into the bogland beyond. If they followed, they'd be slowed. If they hesitated, she'd be free. But just as she reached the far side, a sound cracked through the woods like thunder, a shot. Pain bloomed in her shoulder, her body lurched. The horse stumbled. She hit the ground hard. Papers spilled like feathers into the mud. And above her, silhouetted in torchlight, came the boots of men who no longer saw a niece. Only a problem to be erased. Mud in her mouth. Blood in her eyes. But Mercy Blackwell refused to die quietly. She lay half-submerged in the swamp, shoulder torn, bones aching. Her hands clawed at the soaked earth, dragging herself toward a fallen tree, her last hope of concealment. Behind her, voices barked orders. Torchlight swept through the mist like searching eyes of ancient gods. Josiah's voice rang out, clear and merciless. She is not to leave this marsh alive. Mercy pressed her cheek against the bark, breath ragged. Her body was failing, but her mind? Still sharp, still dangerous. She had memorized the evidence. Every name, every symbol, every line of property reassignment etched in her uncle's ledger like commandments from a darker god. They could take the papers. They couldn't erase what she knew. The deputies moved in threes, combing the bog like hounds. One slipped into the mire not 10 feet from her, his boots vanishing in the black water. She held her breath, heart pounding so violently it seemed to shake the ground beneath her ribs. And then, divine silence. A scream from deeper in the marsh. A second voice crying out, "Something's in the water!" And suddenly chaos. One of the deputies fired blindly. Torches flailed. In the confusion, Mercy seized her moment. She rose, half dead but wholly defiant, and ran. Not toward the road, not toward Boston, toward the caves. Southwest of the village, deep in the granite cliffs, lay the old native caverns, used long before the Puritans ever saw this land. Mercy had gone there once as a child, led by an older girl, whispering tales of ghosts and gods that predated Christ. Now, those caves were her only sanctuary. She stumbled through the forest, bleeding, delirious. Her papers were gone, either trampled or claimed, but the memory of their contents blazed in her mind, more permanent than ink. If she could survive till dawn, she could fight it all. Inside the cave, the cold bit her skin like teeth. She collapsed. The darkness swallowed her, and in that final moment before consciousness slipped away, she whispered words not taught by her uncles, nor printed in any Puritan Bible. Words older than Salem, words that didn't beg for salvation. They promised vengeance. If you followed this far into the shadows, comment, "Black fire wakes," twice below. Let the watchers know you've seen behind the veil, and there's no going back. Not metaphorically, breathed. A low, rhythmic draft pulsed from its deepest chamber, like the exhale of some buried titan beneath the stone. Mercy awoke in total darkness, her skin frozen, her wound stiff and raw. She had no way of knowing how long she'd been unconscious. Hours? A day? Her blood had dried black across her bodice. Her cloak was gone. But she was alive. Somewhere in the twisting roots of her will, a seed of fury had split open, and it was blooming. She no longer felt like a girl running from death. She felt like an archivist of truth, reborn in secrecy, baptized in blood and dirt. Above her, Salem turned. William would say she'd drowned in the bog, most likely. Sheriff Josiah would confirm it. A witch fleeing judgment, lost to the swamps like so many others. No one would search the caves. They feared them. Superstition and old native stories kept them away. But Mercy needed them to stay away. She wasn't done. Using the charcoal from a half-burned torch she'd found at the entrance, she began writing again. Not on paper, on stone. Smooth slate walls became ledgers. The floor, a timeline. Every name, every symbol, every stolen property, etched, scrawled, mapped. She carved her own ledger into the bones of the earth. And while she worked, she remembered. Not just the trials, not just the deaths, but what she'd seen in her uncle's study 1 week before her escape. Something she hadn't yet admitted to herself. A letter, from England, addressed to E. Blackwell, Magistrate of Records. Stamped with a wax seal. Not Puritan, not colonial. A red insignia she had seen only once before. In the margin of an old alchemical text, a serpent coiled around a ring of thorns. The Order of Thorns. An ancient society, older than the colonies, older than the Church of England, and absolutely forbidden in the New World. The letter had spoken of phase completion and Imperium transference. At the time, it had made no sense. Now, in the silence of the cave, Mercy began to see the fuller picture. The witch trials were never just about land. They were a ritual, a sacrifice, an offering made in blood for a new kind of power, political, spiritual, eternal. The Blackwells weren't just tyrants. They were initiates. It was never about witches. That was the distraction, the stage play, the tormented girls, the spectral evidence, the gallows, all camouflage. A spectacle of fear to justify the real work happening in the dark, beneath courthouses, behind locked church doors, beneath signatures of law and sermons of holiness. Mercy saw it now. In the cave, among the damp stone and echoes of dripping water, the threads finally wove together. The Order of Thorns. Her uncle's letter had used terms too specific, too coordinated to be random. Phase completion. Imperium transference. Harvest metrics surpassed. These weren't words written by a desperate man clinging to colonial authority. These were the cold metrics of a centuries-old plan reaching maturity. The Salem witch trials were a carefully orchestrated blood ritual. Not to summon the devil, but to create dominion. Power, concentrated through fear, legitimized through courts, and amplified by public spectacle. A formula, one used long before Salem, and one that would be used again. In London during the Plague, in the Spanish Inquisition, in Rome's secret tribunals, and now, in New England. Each trial a transaction, each execution a transfer, each public terror a binding of power from the many to the few. The order fed on chaos, but it did not create it. It waited for it, then branded it with meaning, morality, law, God. And the people? They did not resist. They begged for it. They begged to be saved from witches, from Jews, from Muslims, from heretics, from pagans, from liberals, from radicals, from each other. Mercy carved those realizations into the cave wall as if engraving commandments. They manufacture the fear. They declare the enemy. They become the saviors. Her hand trembled as she wrote, because now she understood. Her uncles were never the architects. They were agents, initiates, of a structure older than America, a structure that still exists. Mercy knew she was marked. Even if she escaped again, the Order would watch her. They'd call her mad, dangerous, a threat to order, a relic of hysteria. But she had something they could never fully control. Testimony. Even if she had to bleed it into stone, she would leave behind the truth, for someone, someday, somewhere. And if you've heard these words, if you've followed the descent this far, you too are a witness now. You must understand, knowledge like this is a double-edged blade. Once you hold it, the world you thought you knew fractures. You see the shadows between the light, the puppeteers behind the curtain, the poison hidden in the chalice. The Blackwell family wasn't just a local dynasty, they were a node in a vast, unseen network of power and manipulation, a network that thrives on control, psychological, spiritual, economic. Their witch trials were a blueprint for social engineering, a prototype for how elites manufacture consent and crush dissent, disguised as law and faith. It's the same method used today, in far more sophisticated ways. Fear is the ultimate currency. It rewires the mind, divides communities, builds invisible cages around populations too terrified to question. And every institution you trust, courts, churches, police, can be a weapon in this war of shadows. The Blackwells perfected the playbook centuries ago, harvesting not only land and wealth, but submission itself. Remember, those who write the history books write the narrative of power, and the real story, often buried in ledger books, whispered in secret meetings, concealed beneath the floorboards of forgotten churches. The truth is rarely pure, and never simple. If you've felt that stirring in your gut, that suspicion that beneath the surface a darker story pulses, then you are beginning to wake. You've glimpsed the machinery grinding beneath the polished veneer, and now you face a choice. Will you step back into comfortable ignorance, or plunge deeper into the labyrinth? Because once you see the gears turning, there's no unseeing. You become marked, but also armed. If you're ready to confront this darkness, to unmask the hidden forces shaping our world, then stay with me. The next sections will peel back more layers of the Blackwell legacy and reveal how the echoes of their sins still reverberate today. But before we move on, type Blackfire Wakes twice in the comments below. Seal your place among those who choose to see. Because this journey isn't just about history, it's about transformation. And once you step through the veil, nothing will ever be the same. The Blackwell brothers vanished like shadows swallowed by night, but their legacy was etched deep into Salem's soil and psyche. Decades passed. Generations rose and fell, unaware or unwilling to confront the dark foundation beneath their feet. Yet the Blackwell name persisted, whispered in Salem's streets, carried on property deeds, and buried in archives few dared to open. This was no mere family scandal. It was the seed of a dynasty built on silence and blood. Fast forward to the 19th century, Salem's historic district was a prized jewel, drawing wealthy merchants, scholars, and curious tourists. But behind the charm and cobblestone streets, the Blackwell descendants quietly expanded their reach, owning nearly half of the town's most valuable land. Whispers told of private societies meeting under the cover of night, pledging allegiance to secret oaths and cryptic symbols, echoing the ancient Order of Thorns. Occult scholars traced arcane sigils found in Salem's old churches back to Blackwell patronage. Some claimed the family had amassed unimaginable wealth, not just material, but of influence and forbidden knowledge. Power that transcended generations, the American Revolution, the Industrial Age, the rise of banking empires. Through it all, the Blackwells maneuvered in the shadows. Their story was never just local folklore, it was a dark thread woven into the fabric of America's birth and growth. Behind closed doors, rituals persisted. Bloodlines were guarded. Sacred texts passed down, encrypted accounts of the witch trial's true purpose, and the Imperium transference still unfolding. If you feel the chill creeping in as these truths surface, that is not fear, it is awakening. You have begun to see beyond the surface, to perceive the undercurrents shaping history, society, and your very reality. This is the knowledge they wanted buried, erased, forgotten. But it lives, in the stones, in the shadows, in you, ready to peel back more layers.